Hello everyone, my name is Montserrat Valdes and I'm a senior scientist at Cloudlinks. In today's presentation, we're going to talk about a key element in any cancer research, which is the informed consent. Through informed consent, we ensure that the patient needs, preferences, and values are respected and considered throughout cancer clinical trials. Let's start by looking at the clinical trials market size. The global clinical trials industry is expected to grow from around $57 billion in 2023 to around $94 billion in 2030, at a compound annual growth rate of 6.9%. This showcases the increasing importance of clinical research and the potential for advancements in the healthcare and pharmaceutical industries. What are clinical trials? According to the World Health Organization, clinical trials are a type of research that studies new treatments and tests and evaluates their effects on human health outcomes. In this context, a cancer clinical trial is a study to investigate new treatments, therapies, drugs, or interventions in people diagnosed with cancer. Clinical trials are a type of clinical research that is governed by an established protocol to respond to a precise patient care query. In addition, each trial is attached to a protocol that defines what type of people can participate in the study. As we all know, different studies will have different requirements for the people participating in them. People volunteer to participate in cancer clinical trials to test medical interventions, including drugs, biological products, surgical procedures, devices, behavioral treatments, and preventive care, among others. Clinical trials need to be carefully designed and reviewed, and they must be approved by different authorities before they can even start. And people of all ages can participate in clinical trials. They can participate in them as long as they meet the inclusion and exclusion criteria. What does this mean? For example, the inclusion criteria means that participants need to belong to a specific age group. For example, be between 20 and 30 years old. While exclusion criteria might require that participants don't have any chronic disease. That would mean that people with a chronic disease, such as diabetes, cannot participate. Research in humans or research involving human biospecimens require the prior consent of the participants or donors. In order to conduct any research involving human subjects, the participants involved must provide informed consent in advance. In this way, we will make sure that the subjects fully understand the studies and they are willingly participating. Now, let's take a look at the definition of informed consent. As per the International Council for the Harmonization of Good Clinical Practices, informed consent is a process by which a subject voluntarily confirms his or her willingness to participate in a specific trial, after having been informed of all aspects of the trial that are relevant to the decision of the subject to participate. We have to ensure that we have a strong informed consent process, because this is very important in any cancer research. Because if we have an inadequate communication between participants and researchers, this can harm the relationship and this will lead to bad results. It can even terminate the participations of the subjects in the trials. We have to remember that when patients understand the study better, they are more likely to stay interested in them. Now, how do we make sure that informed consent has been granted? Well, we ensure that we have an informed consent through a consent form, which is a written document that must be completed, signed, and dated by the subject to confirm their understanding and agreement to participate in the study. Informed consent must be written in a language that can be easily understood by the subject. We have to remember that most of these participants, they don't have a medical background. So we have to write everything in a simple way with simple words so they can fully understand everything. Also, subjects must provide a written statement indicating their understanding and voluntary participation. And researchers can obtain consent from participants in an electronic format. This is particularly important in the era of decentralized clinical trials, where researchers and participants can be located in different locations. So having electronic consent forms will make all this process easier, faster, and more efficient. Also, we need to remember that it's important to minimize the possibility of influencing the decision of the participants. And we have to give them enough time to think about all the benefits and risks, and they can consider properly their participation. It's important that participants understand all the risks and clearly know the purpose of the studies. We have different benefits of informed consent in clinical cancer research. Among these, we have the participant trust and collaboration. As I previously mentioned, when participants feel well informed and respected, then they trust the researchers more and they work better with them. So in this way, we will be getting better results. Also, as I previously mentioned, we will get accurate and reliable data. And we will also improve the public perception of the researchers and institutions participating if they are governed by ethical rules and they have informed consent from all their participants. And another benefit is that informed consent serves as an evidentiary assurance to researchers. What does this mean? Informed consent protects researchers because it documents all the information that patients receive before they decide to participate. In this way, patients cannot later say, like they cannot say later, that they didn't know enough about the study or they were forced to participate. We will have a record that they willingly agree to participate and they know all the advantages and disadvantages. There are several regulations governing informed consent. The Common Rule for Informed Consent and the FDA regulations govern research involving human subjects in the United States. I will talk about the requirement of those two regulations later in this presentation. Also, the Office of Human Research Protections regulations outlines the elements that must be included in the informed consent process for research involving human subjects. This includes providing information about the nature of the study, the risks and benefits, if there are any alternative options, confidentiality protections, and the right to withdraw at any moment. In the case of the FDA regulations, it outlines the requirements for informed consent of human subjects in clinical trials. Specifically, it states that documentation of informed consent can be waived under certain circumstances. For example, when the research is very safe and it presents minimal risk to the subjects, it can be waived. In this way, the waiver will be not affecting the subject's rights and welfare, but it's important to notice that the study cannot be performed without the waiver. The regulations governing informed consent in Europe are the General Data Protection Regulation and the Clinical Trials Regulation. They are also known as GDPR and CTR, respectively. The GDPR outlines requirements for obtaining informed consent for the processing of personal data, which includes health data collected during clinical trials. In the case of Australia, regulations governing informed consent are set out in the National Statement on Ethical Conduct in Human Research. The National Health and Medical Research Council also provides additional guidelines for obtaining informed consent in specific situations. What are those specific situations? Well, when we have research involving vulnerable populations or when we have research in emergency situations. Now, I will explain the elements for writing informed consent effectively as per the FDA and Common Rule guidelines. An informed consent document must start with an introduction explaining why the potential participants might or might not want to participate in the research. In addition, the key information has to be presented consistently. Also, an informed consent form must include a statement that the study involves research, an explanation of the purposes of the research that can be easily understood by the subject, again, always using simple terms. And also, the expected duration of the individual's involvement can be included in the purpose of the research. This is one of the most asked questions, like the subjects always want to know how long they will have to be there, how often they will have to take samples, and all these time-related questions are very important and they have to be clearly stated. Investigator should describe any expected risk or discomforts. This might be something like injections, frequency of blood tests, etc., and all these discomforts that the subject might experience. Also, the researcher should describe benefits to the subject that can be expected from their research. The investigators need to tell the person about other treatment options, if there are any available. They should explain the good and the bad thing about these options and let the person decide then what to join the current study or choose a different alternative. In seeking informed consent, researchers need to say how they will keep the person information private. And also, they should mention that the FDA might check these records. If the investigation involves more than minimal risk, informed consent should include an explanation stating whether there is any compensation or medical treatment available in case of any injury. Also, the informed consent must describe what this compensation consists of and where they can find more information about it. Subjects must be aware that their participation is completely voluntary and they can withdraw from the study at their pleasure without being penalized. The subjects must be aware that they have the right to refuse participation and they will not lose any potential benefits. Informed consent document must include the following statement. A description of the clinical trial will be available on www.clinicaltrials.gov as required by US law. This website will not include information that can identify you. At most, the website will include a summary of the results. You can search this website at any time. What this tells the person is that the study information will be added to a public database as required by law. Also, it's important to emphasize that no personally identifiable information of subject will be published on this website. In case these basic elements were not enough to build your informed consent form, I will be listing additional elements that, according to the FDA, should be included. These additional elements might or might not be applying at the discretion of the institutional review boards. We recommend that the sponsors of clinical trials contact the IRB to find out which one of these apply. Well, let's start. If you have a pregnant participant, a statement disclosing potential risk to themselves or a developing fetus must be included. The reasons why the investigator might terminate the study or the subject's participation, even if the participants are willingly participating. One example of this is like the participants suddenly develop a chronic disease that will make them not eligible for these studies, and that has to be clearly stated that in those cases, the participants or the subject's participation will be ended. Informed consent document must include the following: any additional costs to the research subject that might apply to participate in the trial, the procedure for ending participation in the study, and any consequences of leaving a trial before the completion of it. A commitment must be made to update the subject on periodic results that might help the subject decide where to continue or terminate their participation in the study. Again, if we have participants well informed, they will be more interested and they will be participating in a more proactive manner. So we have to inform them about the periodic study results to see how everything is going on, and also we have to tell them about the total number of participants involved in the study. In the case of the National Institute of Health funded studies, it must include a description of the certificate of confidentiality. Uh, if genetic test results are to be shared with a website or a subject, information about the genetic information and non-discrimination act must be included. We should remember that this act is a law in the United States that prevents discriminations in employment and health insurance based on genetic information. In other words, it prohibits employers and health insurers from using an individual's genetic information to make decisions about firing, hiring, promotions, or setting insurance premiums. In the case of infectious diseases or epidemics, include a statement that results are required by law to be reported to local health authorities. Conducting research that is regulated by the common rule, it's important to include several key statements to ensure that the rights of the subjects are protected. First, a statement should be included that specifies that identifiers might be removed from data collected during the study and used for future research without further informed consent. This is important to ensure that the privacy of the subjects is protected and that their personal information is not used without their knowledge or consent. Or, include a statement that collected biological samples cannot be used for future research without the subject's explicit consent. This is particularly important when dealing with sensitive or personal information, such as genetic data, to ensure that the subject's privacy is protected. Thirdly, a statement should be included that indicates whether the subject's biological samples can be reused commercially. This is important to ensure that the subject is aware of any potential commercial application of their samples and they can make a decision if they want to keep participating in the study. Fourthly, a statement should be included that outlines the conditions under which clinically relevant results will be disclosed to subjects. This is important to ensure that the subjects are aware of the potential benefits and risks of participating in the study. And again, they can make an informed decision if they want to keep participating or they want to withdraw from it. Finally, it's important to include a statement indicating whether the investigator will perform whole genome sequencing. This is important to ensure that the subject is aware of any potential risk associated and with this type of research, and then they can make an informed consent about their participation. By including all these key elements in research that is controlled by the common rule, researchers can ensure that they are protecting the rights and privacy of their subjects and conducting ethical research that is in line with high industrial standards. Now, in the following section of this presentation, I will show you how a laboratory information management system can help manage informed consent in cancer clinical trials. Why LEMS? Well, first of all, it makes managing informed consent easier and more efficient. Then it minimizes human errors and also eliminates ICF tampering risks. Also, a clinical LEMS can be integrated with several digital tools used for the collection of consent. A LEMS manages the informed consent of participants and tracks records of participants who have withdrawn their consent. As we can see here, we can have many details of the information of the participants, and then we can have a PDF informed consent attached to each of these participants' records. And then we can also mark them as active or inactive, depending if they have withdrawn the participation of a specific study. This can make everything easier and faster because if we don't have an electronic system like this in place, we will end up with a bunch of forms on a desk. And then we don't know which of them are still active, which of them they have been withdrawn from the study. So in this way, we have everything in a single place and it's very easy to track. A LEMS manages all internal and external documents, such as SOPs, records, and quality management manuals. It tracks the revisionist history of each document so that staff members access only the latest version of documents. It also provides role-based document access rights to staff, providing controlled access to confidential confidential records. With this document management feature, you can control the latest version of the consent form aside from the approval process for each participant. So again, if having a LIMS in place, I have seen in several places where they don't have this kind of system in place. So when there is an audit and the auditor asks for a specific record, and they have all their paperwork in binders or cabinets, so it's very hard to locate all these records, and sometimes they just realize that they have lost them. So having a LIMS in place, you will make sure that you have everything in one single place. You can access to all of them in one click. You won't lose anything, and then you can access to them at any time. Also, if we have several versions of one SOP or one document with different versions, like if we have them in paper, it might happen that one of the employees just take the first form they find, and it happens to be that somebody else already worked on it, and then there's a latest version available that is the current one that must be used. So all of these bring problems to the workflow of any research institution. By having a LIMS in place, you can make sure that your employees just access the latest form, the latest version, and then everything is well and properly controlled. LIMS anonymize sensitive participant data and assigns role-based protected health information access rights to staff. The mass data can be viewed only by authorized personnel. Each time an authorized person views or makes any changes to protected health information, the activity is recorded in the audit trail. This is useful for audits because external auditors can request a protected health information audit report at any time. As we know, we are working with protected health information, and all of this information has to be kept confidential. So we can assign access rights to all the personnel depending on their positions. And then every time somebody with access to this personal and confidential data logins into LIMS, it will be automatically recorded in the audit trail. Every single action that this person performs in LIMS, like deleting, modifying, copying, or something they do on this protected information, will be recorded in the audit trail. In the case of an audit, an auditor asks for a copy of all this audit trail, how we keep control of the security features of our LIMS. It's very easy just to go to the audit trail section and export all this activity in an Excel format, for example, and all of this will be marking the time when the person accessed to this information, who did it, and the location. Everything will be there. Also, a good LIMS allows you to create a clinical research study and associated participants with it. In this way, all participants are associated with a specific study. You can make sure that only subjects with an informed consent form signed are participated in these studies. This is a crucial tool both for research integrity and regulatory compliance. Once again, if our institution has different studies going on at the same time, it's very hard to track the participants for each of these studies, especially when we have to manage all these informed consent forms. If we have a LIMS in place, we can have all the participants in each study separated, and we can keep track which of these participants have an informed consent already signed. So in this case, only participants with the informed consent already dated and signed will be able to participate. Again, if we don't have all of these in an electronic format, it's very hard to handle all these informed consent forms and all these different studies. We will just have a bunch of papers sitting there on a desk or in different boxes, and then it's very hard to track and control. In conclusion, let's summarize what we have covered in this presentation. We have already seen that informed consent is an integral part of any clinical research. It lies the foundation for mutual collaboration between the research team and the potential participants. Informed consent must explain to the subjects the purpose of the study, how it will be carried out, and the procedures involved. as well as the possible risks and benefits. Informed consent must provide that participation in or withdrawal from clinical research must be voluntary and without any pressure. Informed consent must be in written and obtained from all potential subjects, whether or not they continue to participate in the research. All these aspects that I have previously mentioned make the management of informed consent a challenging task for any clinical research team. Fortunately, LIMS can help researchers and institutions to manage participants' consent forms with ease. That was all for today. I hope you have found this presentation useful and have a great day. Thank you for your attention.